Agyanatimirandasya Jnanam Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Nam Shrishtam Manumapi Satchiputram Matra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajamurupurim Mathirim Gastavatim Radha Kundan Girivaram Maho Radhikamadhavasam Prapto Yasya Pradita Kripaya Sri Guruntam Natusme Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nikhila Shruti Mali Ratnamala Dhyuti Nirajita Padapankajanta Aji Mukta Kulairupasyamanam Paritashvam Harinam Samshrayami Anarpita Charim Chirat Karunayavatirna Kaloham Shamarpaitamam Natachvalarasam Svabhakti Shriyam Hari Purata Sundara Dyuti Kadamba Sandipita Shadaridai Kandaresh Purato Vasachinandana Ajanulambita Bujjo Kanaka Vadato Sankirtanai Kapitaro Kamalaya Takshu Vishwambaro Dhyavaro Jugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karuna Avataru Hladini Shakti Swarupaya Gauranga Suridaya Cha Bhakta Shakti Pradhanaya Gadadhara Namastute He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Radhe Vrindavanadishe Karunamrita Vahini Kripaya Nijapadabja Dasyanmayam Pradiyatam Bhaktya Vihinaya Paradalakshay Chitascha Kamaditarangamadye Kripamai Tvam Sharanam Prapanam Brinde Namaste Charanaravindam Brinde Namaste Charanaravindam Srila Gurudev Ki Jai Shriman Mahaprabhu Ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Shri Shri Dauji Gopal Ji Ki Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nityananda Ki Jai Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri Venu-gita Ki Jai Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Praman Hari Bol. So, good evening to all of you. Dandavats, and today we are continuing with our series of lectures on Sri Venu-gita. We are in our third meeting where we will be studying verse number 2. We have 20 verses, so today we are going through the second one. Let's see how much time the whole series will take. But as usual, let's make some brief recap of what we were seeing some like 3 days ago or something when we saw verse number 1, which we will see it's kind of similar to today's verse with some added features today. So verse number 1 was describing the autumn season and Krishna entering the forest from the village with his friends, with the cows, and of course playing the flute. All this creating the stage for what we will know as Venu-gita, basically. And of course, for giving proper context, we described a little bit the background of the autumn season by describing the summer season on the rainy season that happened before the autumn season, and all that they imply, not only in terms of external hardships, but how they reflect also internal experiences, emotional experiences of Sri Radha and the gopis reflecting external in the form of forest fire, of heat of separation, or rainy season, of torrents, of evaporation of those tears falling on the summer season and then becoming the rainy season, poetically speaking, and so on. And how also these different seasons brought different udipanas in one direction or another concerning the gopis. And for example, in the rainy season, as we mentioned, for the gopis was, okay, now we are seeing these clouds that reminds us of Shyam Sundar's hue, and they are creating this pain in separation because we are not with him. So then autumn comes and they feel, well, now relief will come, but now they were suffering because they were not able to see those clouds any longer, which somehow were reminding them of their beloved. And also we spoke about how this verse described water ponds with beautiful fragrant lotuses and a very like cool, fragrant, and favorable breeze, if you will, all of these ingredients making the perfect environment for what will be the Venu-gita and eventually the high point, as Guru Maharaj related today, of this 10th canto, and especially the Madhurya section, which will be the Rasa Panchadhyay, or the 5 chapters narrating the Rasa Lila. So of course we also mentioned how the fragrance was described in singular to show how it was carrying different aromas of one single flower to enter into one nostril of Krishna, and then this another breeze carrying the fragrance of another flower to enter into him, or also carrying different messages through lips written by hand by their beloved to one another, and so on. So Krishna is described entering into such a forest. Remember, we are in Purvan Lila, mid-morning pastimes, where Sri Hari is going for Gocharan Lila with his friends, with his Gopalakas. The verse described them. The Gopalakas mean Gopals, but the Ka implies an added tenderness or sweetness, with this adding further description to the emotional softhood present in the hearts of all its participants, basically. So the verse basically ended saying, and therefore Achyuta entered the forest. So a name for Krishna here invoked. We will see different names invoked in each verse, and of course every name has a meaning, and it has a particular meaning in the particular context it is invoked. So Achyuta is generally an Ishvaric name of Krishna, of Bhagavan, invoking Achyuta means he who does not fall, or the infallible one, which generally has to do with his position of God, and as God being infallible and so on. But here Sukadev is invoking this name in the context of Vrindavan, so it has to do more with his infallibility in terms of himself being Bhakta Vatsalya, for example, or his Bhakta Vatsalya, which is his love for his devotees, and how he sees himself in that Abhiman, his self-conceived identities. I'm a Bhakta of my Bhaktas. That's what the Bhagavatam says when it defines Bhagavan. It says Bhagavan Bhakta Bhaktiman, which means Bhagavan is a Bhakta of his Bhaktas. That's his favorite self-designation. Who are you, Krishna? I'm the devotee of my devotees. Aham Bhakta Paradino, Yashra Tantri Bhadra, and so on. So Achyuta means he's infallible in reciprocating with the love of his devotees. Although we will see regarding the gopis, he will recognize I'm failing in this, but that's another layer, another level of the narrative. We have not reached there yet. And also we mentioned that some editions do not include the word Achyuta, but include the word Vanam, which means forest. And the acharyas, the commentators, had mentioned that at this point Sukadev Goswami's throat was choked up and he was not able to pronounce Achyuta because of all the implications that the name has in this particular context, all the implications of Achyutaness, if you will. He was not able to pronounce the very word, or to speak or enter into the details of those implications. So he said he entered the forest, if we want to replace Achyuta for Vanam. And of course, in today's verse number 2, it will be further clarified who is that he who entered the forest, And Krishna in this second verse, interestingly, he will be called Madhupati. Madhupati means many things, we will see, but basically means the master of sweetness. So it will be another way of saying Achyuta, if you will. If you play out the implications of Achyuta, those will converge into the notion of Madhupati, he who is sweetness from tip to toe, especially in connection to the Madhurya, my gopis, Sri Radha and so on, which make him especially sweet, especially Krishna. So that's what we saw last class, brief recap. So today we will go to verse number 2. I think you have the verse there just in case you would like to follow. So the verse says like this. Where it is? Okay. So it says like this. So in this verse, we will see how Krishna is described. It's a very similar verse to the first one. We will see that. And how Krishna is playing a very captivating tune of his flute, drowning the whole Vrindavan in bliss, basically. It says, Kushumita Vanaraji Sushmi Bringa Dvija Kula Gushta Sara Sarin Mahidram Madhupatir Bhagahya Charayangaha Saha Pashu Palabalastu Kuja Venum. So the translation of the verse says, hope we have the same one, the lakes, rivers, and hills of Vrindavan resounded with the sounds of maddened bees and flocks of birds moving about the flowering trees. In the company of the cowherd boys and Balaram, Madhupati Sri Krishna entered that forest, and while herding the cows, he began to vibrate his flute. Now we need more leader doing the soundtrack, background soundtrack. Next one. Do not tell anyone. They didn't hear anything, so we'll make the surprise. Okay. So this, and again, as I mentioned, this is similar, as we will see, very similar, almost identical if you compare the previous verse with this one. Almost even every single line is saying very similar things. But in this verse is taking a little bit more of life, basically, than the previous one. The description is a little bit more like unfolded, a little bit more alive, if you will. To give you an example, in the previous verse, Krishna is being described as go entering the forest with the cows. Go. Now in this verse, he's called entering the cows with other animals. Pala, Pashu Pala. Pashu means, before he said Gopala. Gopala means protectors of cows. Now he said protectors of animals. So apart from cows, some other animals are appearing into the scene. So gradually the scene is becoming more crowded, if you will, with the different ingredients of the entering the forest. So this verse again says, Kushumita Banaraji Sushmi Bringa. That's the first line. Kushumita is translated as flowering. And Banaraji has to do with groups of trees. Banaraji is something like the kings of the forest. One way of referring to the trees. And Sushmi Bringa. Bringa means bees, and Sushmi means like maddened, intoxicated. Bees generally are described like a drunkard. So they are intoxicated, as we will see. And all this will be connected to also the name Madhupati. And then Dvija Kula Gusta. So Dvija refers to the twice born. That's a name for the Brahmanas also, but that's a name for the birds, because birds are twice born, once in the eggs and then outside the eggs. So that's why they are called Dvija. Dvi means two, and Ja has to do with Janma, twice born. Kula has to do with flocks of birds, and Gusta, were resounding. So not only the bees were like, how to say, brimming, bzzz, buzzing. So the bees were buzzing, and flocks of birds were singing or chirping, if you will, Gusta. And Sara Sarin Mahidram, then it says, Sara means lakes, Sarin means in this case rivers, and Mahidram means hills. So it's important to try to enter into some sort of visualization, because it's pretty aesthetic and graphic, all these verses of the Bhagavatam, trying to create a picture for us. So the flowering trees are there, the mad and intoxicated bees are there, the singing birds are there, and all of this in the context of very calm and clean and peaceful autumn lakes, a river flowing in Vrindavan, along with the mountains of Braj. So that's the first half of the verse. And then what's happening in that unique playground, in that particular stage? Madhupatir abhagahya charayam gaha. So Madhupatir, Krishna, the protector of the Lord of the Madhus, or as we will see also the master of honey, if you want to put it like that, or the master of sweetness. Abhagahya. So Abhagahya means he entered. And Abhagahya, we'll see different terms in detail, means he entered deeply. He didn't just enter the forest, but entered deeply, accessed deeply into the forest. Charayan gaha. So Charayan gaha means while tendering the cows. And further description, because he's never alone. Saha Pashupala Balas Chukujavan. So did he went with Saha Pashupala Balaha. So Saha means with, Pashupala means what? I told already. Protectors of animals. No, it's another way of saying Gopals with his friends, but in this case they are protecting not only the cows and calves, but some deers here and there, and so on, some other animals. And Balaha, who is Bala? Shidauji Maharaj ki jai. So Sri Balaram is there. And what happened in such stage with such entourage? Chukuja Venu. Chukuja means vibrated, and Venu means flute. So he vibrated his flute. He played his Venu, Venu-gita. So that's a little bit the word by word. And this verse, which again, it very nicely serves in connection with the previous ones as a form of mantra maya upasana. Mantra maya upasana refers to a particular mantra, where a particular type of meditation which happens out of a mantra, if you will, a particular mantra which is describing a specific, how do you say in English, like a frame of a picture. Frame is the word, not like the moving scenes, but you put pause and you have a particular frame. So you take a picture of that, if you will, and you can like try to enter into that picture specifically. Sorry? Freeze frame. I don't know. You are the cinema expert here. It's not me, but you follow my idea. Like a portal, a particular picture with a detailed description of what's happening there, but still it's a picture. It's not play on the whole movies. That's another dynamics of meditation that also is described in Shastra. But here it's mantra maya upasana. So this verse is, again, similar to the other one, but presenting an added, a little bit further description of what's going on. It's getting more alive. It's still in pause, mantra maya upasana, but some little place is there, start to move gradually. And of course, again, all these different ingredients that are described here, we have always to bear in mind the role of someone like, for example, Brinda Devi in this connection, who is like the official, one of the official orchestrators of all these ingredients. She's like the organizer of the dynamics of each moment of the Leela, invoking the specific weather and seasons and sounds and forms, and certain flowers have to blossom now, certain fruits have to bear, trees have to bear fruit in this precise moment, and creating the most ideal, perfect combination of all the circumstances, like the head of the communication department in Vrindavan, like communicating to all the different members of the Leela. You come here, you sound there, you shut up at this moment, not now. That will be your turn in a while, wait for a minute. You come into this scene, and so on. So she's like the one who is very expert in organizing all the things and communicating to every ingredient of Vrindavan, which is another way of saying to every devotee in Vrindavan, because their ingredients are devotees. What to do, how to do, how to sending messages and monitoring all the movements in the Leela. And sometimes it is said that that's precisely why we have her in our neck, in the form of Srimati Tulsi Maharani. Brinda Devi is a name that she receives mostly exclusively in the Braja Leela. Outside of Braja Leela, she's known as Tulsi Maharani. So generally, we are carrying her on our neck. Of course, there are many ways we can justify our Kanti Mala. but one of them is like she's here, like monitoring what's going on through our throat. I'm passing messages. She's the head of the communication department, no? So it's passing, how much Harinam is passing through our throat on a daily basis. Not the number, but what's going on in our throat, basically. No, how many doses of Harikatha is transpassing our throat? How much prasad and not boga is transpassing our throat, and so on. And paying attention to that. Again, it's not only quantity, it's quality, because sometimes in the name of quantity, one may, as I was hearing the other day, one devotee saying, some people may chant 1 lakh every day, and that maybe they are going full speed in their sadhana, but also they need to have proper guidance in their full speed. It's like if you are in a car going full speed, but you are going into the wrong highway, you may be full speed and just getting closer to the cliff at full speed. So conceptual orientation is important, and chanting in a proper way, not just like making a show of, oh, I'm chanting 1 lakh, because I've seen those things sometimes, like 1 lakh, 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs, relax, relapse, and nothing happens in other than. But all started with 1 lakh and 3 lakhs and 3 lakhs, relax, relapse, and so Brinda Devi is monitoring all that in our side of the sadhaka, not just to make some parallels of what's going on in the realm of the siddhas and with us sadhakas here. So, and of course, we will see in this and other verses how there are plenty and limited parallels or analogies and comparisons that our acharyas are drawing with the lotuses and with the lakes and with the birds and the bumblebees in connection to the attributes of Bhagavan, Sri Krishna, or Radha, the gopis. But also it's important always to know that they are just like an attempt to give us a glimpse of something that has no parallel in this world whatsoever. Actually, Govinda Lilamrita very poetically says that the creator collected the very essence of every beautiful object to produce the limbs of Radha and Krishna. It's a way of putting that. And he said the leftover portions fell into the ground on this earth and became lotuses, bumblebees, lakes, chakora birds, all the things that generally are used for giving examples in comparison, the moon, all of them fell like a remnants of what's remaining from what composes their limbs, basically. So again, these analogies that we may present in this and other verses are just a partial attempt to speak about something that where words go and return, as the Upanishads say. So this verse starts again with the word Kushumita Vanuraji. Remember, it's describing very fragrant trees present in Vrindavan. So it's interesting because sometimes we may, like when you go in some sections of the Bhagavatam that is describing like dynasties of very many saintly kings or something, I would say, oh, this is so boring. So many names, I will go pass quickly to the nectar. Or in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the description of the tree of divine love and all the branches and the trunks and sub-branches, and it's name after name after name of great personalities, and we may feel, what to do with this, or something. Or sometimes Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami gets absorbed and described like the different offerings that were made to Mahaprabhu or to Jagannath, and you have pages just of names of preparations of prasad. And for most of us, maybe I don't have a clue what these preparations are about, because there's all names in Bengali and so on. So someone may like, let's go to the pastimes as quick as possible. But we shouldn't take that stance. We should take very important, serious appreciation of every single word of Shastra. So similar here. Now, for example, here we find the trees of Vrindavan. And we may say, oh, okay, yeah, nice, very nice, the trees, yeah. But not. I don't have time to enter much into detail. Well, tell that to Prabodhananda Saraswati or someone like him. Now, for example, in here's Vrindavan Mahimamrita. He's dedicated hundreds of verses only to the trees of Vrindavan, hundreds, to enter into the detail, every tree and their name, and their attributes, and how they render service, tree after tree after tree, and then go into another species in Braj, and then other species of Braj. So the glorification of the trees of Vrindavan is in itself a whole tattva, if you will, a whole department, a whole category of Mahima. Mahima means like praise. No? So we hear many times, no? Like, oh, Mahatmya. No? So Braja Mahima, in this case, will be Braja Briksha Mahima, or the glories of the trees of Vrindavan. Again, it's not something like, let's pass as quick as possible the pages and go to the moving objects or something like that. But our acharyas have spent all the time they had in those directions. There are indeed many stories of great personalities having main part of their sadhana, worshiping the trees of Vrindavan, embracing them, offering pranam, singing their glories, and to the visitors mentioning, execute your bhajana under the trees of Raj. These are great personalities. They are not only trees. That's the point. I mean, because the point is, but why a tree? Well, the point is that it's not only a tree. We are speaking here about Braja Briksha, not only Briksha. I mean, the tree in itself is to be venerated. Tarora Pisya Yishnana. What to speak the trees of Braj, as we all see. So remember, in Vrindavan, every tree is Kalpa Briksha. Today, Guru Maharaj was speaking about how in Vrindavan, the highest degree of Aishvarya is found in Vrindavan, where the highest degree of Madhurya is present there. We may think, no, the Aishvarya side is mostly in Vaikuntha. Vrindavan has no Aishvarya. No, in Vrindavan you find more Aishvarya than anywhere else put together. But all that Aishvarya is buried under layers and layers of intimacy. It doesn't mean it's not there. It's there, but it's totally under the ground, underground, basically. So in Vrindavan, every tree is a Kalpa Briksha, every speck of dust in Chintamani, every cow is Kamadhenu. So all the atoms in Vrindavan can satisfy all one's desires. Right? Is that not Aishvarya? But something about that, it is said that no one in Vrindavan is asking anything from them, basically. It's not that, oh, so we can ask whatever we want and we will receive whatever. Nobody's asking. As much they are thinking about, we can get some trees, some fruits, and some flowers for offering to Krishna. But it is said that in the very moment that they are thinking about that, the trees themselves are like inclining. So they do not need even to ask for that. No, they just need to think about that, and everything is in perfect alignment of seva. So here it is described how the trees are blossoming of joy when Krishna is entering the forest. It is mentioned from one very nice example that once Srila Rupa Goswami, he used to execute bhajan under different trees of Vrindavan. That's what Guru Maharaj will say. The Goswamis had built very big temples, but actually they slept every single night under a different tree also. That was their high, top class hotel, if you will, in Vrindavan, under Kalpa Briksha. What can be more Aishvarya than a 5-star hotel? I mean, that's a 108-star hotel, one Kalpa Briksha, and so many. So he will write also and execute his bhajan under Kalpa Brikshas in Braj. So at one point he was really afflicted by separation from Krishna in his inner mood of bhajan, and the trees that were next to him, you can imagine everything there is totally sensitive and empathic. So Sri Rupa Goswami was trying to save himself, if you will, in that extreme experience of separation, and the trees were also accompanying him in that mood. And in his writing, he's writing about the meeting of Sri Radha and Krishna. No? So that kind of keeps him alive. And it is said that when Rupa Goswami will write about the meeting of Radha and Krishna, the tree that he was under starts to blossom, no? Like creating new, I would say, buds, and so on. So imagine if a tree reacts in such a way by hearing about or reading about the meeting of Radha and Krishna, how much the tree must react when Krishna himself is entering the forest, like he's doing in this verse today, after a long night of separation. Because everyone is feeling separation in Vrindavan. It's not only the humans. No? So Krishna is in the village, goes to the forest big part of the day, but then returns from the forest to the village. And when he returns to the village, that's a tragic stage for the inhabitants of the forest, especially the trees that cannot move. It's not that, okay, let's join Krishna, let's run after him. Everyone is running after him. They are like, what to do? We have to wait till tomorrow. And as you know, in the fever of separation, one moment is like a yuga. So what to speak, a long night. So now Krishna is re-entering the forest and the trees are receiving him by giving Puspanjali and showing new sprouts and new buds and so on. So again, the trees, as Mahaprabhu said, they are an example of tolerance. Tarori Vasahishnuna. The trees in general, he's saying. In this verse, Mahaprabhu is not saying, I'm referring to the Braja Briksha. The trees in general has such an example of tolerance. We won't enter into that verse because that requires a whole month of talks. But how the trees, Mahaprabhu is not saying be humble and be tolerant. He's qualifying his instruction, be tolerant like a tree. So it's a special type of tolerance that is not complaining, is dealing with all the different climates and people attacking them, urinating on them, writing on them, I love Jenny or whatever nonsense, and cutting them, exploiting, and the tree not only not complaining, but giving while being attacked. Giving shade, giving fruit, giving air, giving, while tolerating. That's the level of tolerance that Mahaprabhu wants to see in his followers. Not just, I have to tolerate. I would like to jump into his neck, but I have to tolerate. Mahaprabhu told me. No, just giving. So you are actually not tolerating, you are giving. If you are a real giver, you will never even think about tolerating. You may be thinking, I have to tolerate not being able to give that much as I would like. That's the tolerance, and that's at that level. So every tree is tolerating in that way, mostly if you want externally all these things that come, but in the case of the Braja Brikshas, they are tolerating all those things plus internal separation from Krishna. They are tolerating the external heat of the summer of Raj. They are tolerating the internal forest fire of separation every single night that Krishna is leaving the forest. So that's, if you want to play out the ultimate implication of Tarori Vasahishnuna, it converges in the trees of Vrindavan and their level of tolerance. And it would be nice to think like that. Mahaprabhu thinking about the tree, most probably his mind is more Vrindavan. He said once, my mind is Vrindavan. So if he speaks about the tree, he will think about the tree in Vrindavan. So that's our ultimate Sahishnuna, basically. Not so much tolerating heat and cold, or that's one level of tolerance, no? What's coming outside. Another level of tolerance is internal tolerance, that criticism or thoughts that may come, prejudice and tolerance, desires, tolerance. But another level of tolerance is separation of Krishna. That's the 2.0 tolerance level, if you will, the highest update. First level, tolerance of external stuff. Second, mental stuff. Third, spiritual stuff, if you will, tolerating separation of Krishna. And actually, Mahaprabhu will say, Durdaivam, Idrisha Mihajan, our Durdaivan, or our lack of fortune, is that still we don't feel the need to tolerate that. No, we don't feel that we have to tolerate separation from Krishna because probably we don't feel separation from Krishna. And that's our problem. And that's why we feel we have to tolerate so many other things. So that's a good thermometer to see where we are. No? What do we feel we have to tolerate? What do we feel? I have to tolerate what? So you will see where we are on a physical level, on a more internal level, or I have to tolerate carrying my life affairs while in separation of my. Of course, you cannot imitate that, but ideally we are getting to get closer to that. So the trees of Vrindavan are a great example of that tolerance. No? As we mentioned the other day, no, it is described that they are almost dying in separation of the internal fire of separation, but they kept alive because of the torrents of tears that come from the gopis in separation that are watering the trees. So somehow one is saving each other. Everyone is dying in separation, but somehow Brinda Devi Jogamaya makes the arrangement for them to survive and help each other, even without being conscious of that, but that's happening. So Again, I'm being brief here, mentioning some little Braja Briksha Mahima, some little glories of the trees or the flowers of Braj. But again, there are so many verses, not only Prabodhananda Saraswati, but many other. Braja Vilas Tava, Raghunath Das Goswami, also he takes the time to go through every single species in Braj before reaching Shri Radha and Krishna and so on. He begins with all these different inhabitants there, offering their pranam, asking blessings to all of them. I tried to study that verse before visiting Vrindavan last time. I asked Guru Maharaj. He said, yeah, that's a nice way to enter Vrindavan. Before entering, you start to pray to every single inhabitant, please bless me, please allow me to access this place and so on. So, and again, these trees and creepers and vines and flowers of Braj are very dear to Radha and Krishna themselves. So it is said sometimes that Krishna loves to plant trees in Vrindavan, and Sri Radha loves to plant creepers in Vrindavan, which of course is also a parallel. Krishna is generally compared to a tamal tree, and Sri Radha to a vine that is growing around the tamal, embracing the tamal tree. And it is said that when the trees start to grow, Radha and Krishna go and marry each other, marry the tree to the vine and make some ceremony. And eventually they give some flowers and fruit. They say, oh, they're having kids now. Family is expanding. We have to celebrate. So, yeah. So the verse begins with this, glorifying these trees and the flowers, because flower and trees. And very interestingly here, also that's connected to the meter of the verse. The meter here, or chanda in Sanskrit, different verses have different meters, as you may have realized. It's not that we always recite the verse and they have the same quantity of syllables and so on. So one may wonder why the first verse and the next ones after these ones have the same meter, but this one in between, which is the second, has a different meter. Sometimes that may be seen as an irregularity, but in this case has to do with more internal meaning that could be done, because the meter here is called Pushpitagra. So Pushpitagra means the best of all flowering flowers. So Sukadev Goswami is someone with deep sensibilities for Braja at this point of his narration. So he chose to speak about this verse, which is speaking about the fragrant flowers in the trees of Braj. So let's invoke one chanda that goes in line with this. So instead of invoking Anushtup, which is the most classical chanda, and that is the one in the previous verse, in the next verse, he's invoking Pushpitagra chanda, the best of all flowering flowers. Because again, here it is speaking about some flowering trees blossoming and offering their flowers to Krishna, and those flowers are the best of all flowering flowers, basically. And our acharyas also in this connection mentioned, we already spoke a little bit about udipana, or this, like, how do you say in English? Kindlers or stimulants that somehow like make the dipa udipana. Like if you have a little dipa, a little lamp, and you want like to make the flame, you throw some whatever, camphor or some gas to be more gross, and the fire will explode, will become bigger. So udipana refers to that. So it is said that in Madhurya Bhav, which is the context we are describing this narration, the main udipana is flowers. That's why also it's always described, for example, Cupid carrying an arrows made of flowers, and flowers are here and there always in Radha Krishna Leela and decoration and this. And so flowers, of course, it's in every single rasa in Vrindavan, it's full of flowers, but especially it is considered as a stimulant for Madhurya Bhav. So Pushpitagra chanda more than correct here. So also this verse mentions the rivers, for example. And the river, of course, if we speak river in Vrindavan, the mind goes immediately to Jamuna, Sri Mati Jamuna Devi Ki Jai. So, and of course, Jamuna Devi, since we are speaking about Udipana, that's a total constant Udipana for both Sri Radha and Krishna, interestingly, for different reasons. To say that, for example, when Sri Radha is seeing Jamuna, she feels Udipana because Jamuna, another name for Jamuna is Krishna. Because Krishna means black, so we say yesterday. So Jamuna's waters, interestingly, are I mean, not black, literally black as we know it, but they are dark, close to Krishna's hue. So when Sri Radha sees the Jamuna, that's acts as Anudipana for her because she's reminded of Krishna's hue. And for Krishna, when he sees the Jamuna, that's Anudipana for him because that's reminding him of Radha's cloth. Because Radha's cloth is the color of Krishna's hue. And Krishna's cloth is the color of Radha's hue. So in this way, the same thing is Anudipana for both, for slightly different reasons, but quite connected because one is dressing in the color of the other's hue, basically. Or for example, when there are little lakes or waterfalls mentioned here in Govardhan, there are different waterfalls. So sometimes that's also an Udipana when Krishna sees a little waterfall falling from a little hill in Govardhan, that reminds him of Sri Radha's face, and like little drops of perspiration falling from her in the different leelas he's having with him. And the same thing, vice versa, Sri Radha seeing Govardhan, a more dark, you see there are different colors of stones in Govardhan. So for some will remind, of course, that applies to Balarama as well, but in the case of Madhurya Bhav, it will have another slight different connotation. So again, everything reminds Radha about Krishna, and everything reminds Krishna about Radha. It's not just some things, and the rest of the day they are lost in something else. She's Krishna Mai, she's full of Krishna inside and out. But certain specific things like flowers or these things kind of udipanize their sthai bhav, their official fixed emotion for them. So it's important, of course, eventually advanced devotees will nourish their affinity by embracing closely the particular dipanas for their respective bhavas. There's a famous song by Sri Thakur Bhaktivinoda where he lists a very interesting list of udipanas. Now, of course, in the context of his particular bhav, when he starts describing Radha Kunda Tata Kunja Kutira Govardhana Parvata Jamuna Tira. That's the beginning of the list. There he starts with the general thing, the banks of Radha Kunda, Govardhan Hill, the bank, Jamuna, but then goes into further detail and how important he's consciously cultivating those specific udipanas. And in this way, also here, as we mentioned, there are different birds mentioned. And all the birds are as udipana because there are many leelas connected with this. There are leelas in which Krishna is dressing himself as a cuckoo bird. Now we won't enter into the details, that's too long, or dressing as a peacock, another. And Sri Radha dresses as a peahen, you say peahen? The female version of a peacock, whatever. So the point is, whenever Radha or Krishna sees all these different birds, they are reminded of those particular leelas connected to themselves in those connections. For example, the peacocks also generally, they sing kika. Kika. If you hear the peacock, kika, which generally means, who is that? Ke, who is that, means ke, who is that in male, and ka means who is that in female. So generally, it is said that the peacocks is speaking the lila in riddles. So they say something like, if I'm making you a riddle, and who is that? Ke, and the other, ka, and who is that? And they, of course, they're speaking about Radha and Krishna, like in riddles. Let's see if you're here and there. Who is that? Who is that? So Radha, Krishna. And what to speak of the parrots? Again, I'm just giving a brief summary. We can have a whole series of lectures every visit with one single species here and there. 1 month the tree, 1 month the bees, 1 month the parrots. But the parrots, of course, are very famous for imitating the voices and creating a whole dramatic performance and climates and representing different emotional things just by their voices and composing poetry on the spot. They are very famous. Radha and Krishna have their own pet parrots that they feed them with pomegranate seeds, and they ask, we always speak, like Krishna says to a parrot, please memorize these verse. And he gives like a dhara, an unending verse that begins with dhara, which means current or some other things, carrying. And the verse is like trying to, like if I tell you now, let's memorize the verse, and I say Bahapidam Nato Baraba Punak, and you say, stop, Maharaj, first word, please. It's too much. So the parrot says like this to Krishna. It's too much. I'm a parrot. Krishna said, okay. Just repeat the first word and that's okay. What's the first word? Dhara. The verse says, Dhara, 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 Dhara. And Krishna is saying, okay, yeah, continue. He ends up saying Radha, Radha, Radha. No? So similarly, Sri Radha has her own tricks to make the parrot repeat the names of Hari, and they reward them eventually accordingly, and so on. So again, the parrots in Vrindavan are not just parroting. As we know, a parrot is sometimes it's just famous for repeating something without understanding, but we have the second parrothood, if you will, which is, as poetically it is said, the parrot is biting a fruit and it's making it sweeter. At least poetically speaking, I don't know how much scientifically that's proved. It's similar to the swan taking milk from a combination of milk and water, but there's a point being made there. So Sukadeva is sometimes that's idea. So in Vrindavan, every parrot is, again, not just parroting, but always making the fruit sweeter, if you will. So in this way, the perfectly orchestrated by Brinda Devi, this whole forest of Vrindavan is perfectly combining the humming, the buzzing of the bees, the chirping of the birds, the singing of the birds, and the rivers and the lakes creating a particular sound as well. It's like a whole symphony, or everything like aligned. And Krishna starts to play his Venu, and it is said that the Acharya said that he very skillfully blended his own playing of the flute with all different sounds of Vrindavan's birds and bees. And no, it's not like, here I am, listen to me, and all of you shut up, please. No. In a very humble and expert way, he entered into the symphony that was already taking place, and he added to that, by playing the flute. So his sound merged and blended, added to the whole musical equation. And what's something about the bumblebees, because bumblebees are mentioned here. Well, Krishna himself is known as a bumblebee, as we know. We have studied some months ago the Venu-gita, which is the last of these songs, and Krishna is basically there sometimes described as a bumblebee, or the bumblebee that appears on a scene. It is said sometimes to be considered by Sri Radha as Krishna himself, and so on. And of course, a bumblebee is someone who is focusing, drinking the nectar from the flower, and generally depicted in a, how to say, drunkard state, drunken. So here we have another very nice description of Krishna as a bumblebee. It is said that sometimes if a bumblebee becomes angry, he can even like pierce a wood. He can penetrate something like wood, so it can become angry, as you can see. So do not meet an angry bumblebee, just in case. But also it is said that an intoxicated bumblebee, a drunkard one, can become so dizzy that just remains attached, drinking the nectar of a flower, and it gets snagged and the lotus is closing, and the bumblebee never realizes that and remains there, buried in the lotus flower, if you will. So to say that similarly, Krishna, bumblebee Krishna, Madhupati, as we will see, can become angry and pierce wood, which means destroy very powerful demons like Kamsa and Jarasandha and Sisupal, armies, etc. He can become really angry if he wants, But also, like the bumblebee getting trapped into the lotus, Krishna can become totally trapped, like a bumblebee. He's a bumblebee, and it is said he can become trapped in the world of the lotus like hearts of the Brajavasis. So Krishna is described poetically as a bumblebee drinking the honey of the prem of the Brajavasis heart, so much, getting so intoxicated that the lotus is closing and Krishna remains there forever, technically speaking. So that's the name that of Krishna that is invoked here. I may take a little extra minutes today with Gorsundar Prabhu's blessings, please. And the name is Madhupati. Again, we have to spend some time in this Madhupati, which means, again, as we mentioned, like the Madhupati means like the Lord. Many things can be said about Madhupati. Pati can mean also husband, and Madhu can refer to the Madhurya, Mai gopis. So he's the husband of the gopis in the sense that they belong to each other, even though externally they're in Parakiya. Madhupati means the Lord, again, of the Madhus, as we'll see. The Lord of Madhurya, let's begin with that. We already spoke about that. We spoke already about these 4 Madhuryas that make Krishna unique, that make Krishna Swayam Bhagavan, even above Narayan. Venu Madhurya, Rupa Madhurya, Lila Madhurya, Prema Madhurya. And everything in him, actually, it's totally Madhur, sweet. As we sang, well, we didn't sing, we can sing. You have the file, you seen the file? Here, we can sing one song. I was planning to end every meeting with some singing, but today we will make the singing in between, because there is a very proper song that I would like to share. Can you give me the mridanga? Which is the Madhurashtakam of Sripad Bhalabacharya. So this is a very, very unique song. Thank you. And I want to give a caution, just in case, because I wouldn't like all this to end in some tragedy or something. So any of you has diabetes, please leave the room right now, because there's too much sweetness here, too much. So we don't want any tragedy. The retreat is going on very nicely, and it should continue as such. So please do not make me. So we'll sing this Madhurashtakam. So I will sing. How can we sing? It's so many ways of singing this. So I'll sing myself the song. It will have 2 different melodies. First part, one melody. Second verse, one melody. The third, the same melody of the first, and so on. It's not so difficult, but so you can hear and join. But we can repeat the last line, which is like the line that repeats and after every verse I will continue. Someone can play cartels. I will continue. I will read the translation of every verse. You will see the word Madhuram quite often. So this is Madhurashtakam. Adharam madhuram, bhadanam madhuram, nayanam madhuram, hasitam madhuram, hridayam madhuram, bhamanam madhuram, madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram. Madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram. His lips are sweet, his face is sweet, his eyes are sweet, his smile is sweet, his heart is sweet, his gait is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of sweetness. Vachanam madhuram, Charitam madhuram, Vachanam madhuram, Balitam madhuram, Chalitam madhuram, Bhramitam madhuram, Madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram, Madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram. Another time. Madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram. His words are sweet. His character is sweet. His dress is sweet. His belly folds are sweet. His movements are sweet. His wandering is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of sweetness. Venur Madhuram, Renur Madhuram, Panir Madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram Madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram Madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram. His flute is sweet, his foot dust is sweet, his hands are sweet, his feet are sweet, his dancing is sweet, his friendship is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. I will repeat the same melody over again so you can join if you want. Geetam madhuram, Geetam madhuram, Bhuktam madhuram, Shubtam madhuram, Rupam madhuram, Tilakam madhuram, Madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram Madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram. His singing is sweet, his yellow cloth is sweet, his eating is sweet, his sleeping is sweet, his beauty is sweet, his tilak is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. Karanam madhuram, Karanam madhuram, Haranam madhuram, Ramanam madhuram, Bhamitam madhuram, Shamitam madhuram, Madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram, Madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram. His deeds are sweet, his liberating is sweet, his stealing is sweet, his love sports are sweet, his oblations are sweet, his tranquility is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. Gunja madhura, mala madhura, Jamuna madhura, Vichi madhura, Salilam madhuram, Kamalam madhuram, Madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram, Madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram. His gunja berry necklace is sweet, his flower garland is sweet, his Jamuna river is sweet, her ripples are sweet, her water is sweet, her lotuses are sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor's sweetness. Gopi madhura, Leela madhura, Yukta madhura, Bhukta madhura, Krishna madhura, Krishna madhura, Madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram, Madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram. His gopis are sweet, his pastimes are sweet, his union is sweet, his food is sweet, his delight is sweet, his courtesy is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. Gopa madhura, Gavo madhura, Jastir madhura, Shristir madhura, Dalitam madhura, Palitam madhura, Madhuradhipaterakhilam madhura, Madhuradhipaterakhilam madhura. His gopas are sweet, his cows are sweet, his staff is sweet, his creation is sweet, his trampling is sweet, his fruitfulness is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. Shri Madhurastakam ki jai, Sripad Vallabhacharya ki jai, Gaur Preman Hari Bol. So, a little bit of context to understand Madhupati now. So now we will share some words about Madhupati and how everything about why Krishna is called the Lord of Sweetness, basically. So again, we share some words. Madhupati, the Lord of Sweetness, the bumblebee Krishna, the only enjoyer of the flower of the hearts of the Brajavasis. So in the same way as the bumblebee is the only enjoyer of that nectar, Krishna is the Akila Rasamrita Murti, or the exclusive enjoyer of all the rasas actually in Vrindavan. So this extends, of course, to every inhabitant and applies specifically in this case to the gopis. Sanatana Goswami also gives a nice description of Madhupati in connection to Madhusudan. There's different names of Krishna connected to Madhu, all of them in this line. In Brihad Bhagavatamrita, he says, Madhusudan is the name of a particular bee, well known for his rapacious nature, of greedily collecting honey from many lotus flowers. Another Madhusudan, known as Krishna, took from the gopis and ruined all their honey. Sudayati. Sudayati means ruined. So Madhusudan is he who ruins the honey. Ruins in a poetic sense. He who took everything from them. Or he took all their attractive and enjoyable qualities. He stole everything they had. And also Sanatana Goswami comments on this verse, mentioning that Madhu, in this case of Madhupati, Madhu means liquor also. Liquor, you say? Like intoxicating beverage, a particular intoxicating drink. And Krishna is the master of that, the master of liquor, basically. The gopis like to call Krishna like this, you're a drunkard, basically, we know you. That's how Sri Radha starts Venu-gita, almost saying, insulting Krishna from that, oh, you're a drunkard, I know you, you're a friend, you bumblebee are a drunkard, you are coming to represent Krishna, so you are representing another drunkard, birds of the same feather flock together. So you're a drunkard, you get along with other drunkards, you end up being drunkard, what to do? So, and Sanatana Goswami said this idea of Madhupati here has a double meaning, which means that Krishna gets intoxicated by the love of his devotees, but he's an intoxicator of his devotees, like mutual drunkenness, basically, in this context. Of course, the liquor is prem, the liquor is love. So when you are in love, you are in a state of madness, if you want. That's Guru Maharaj will today invoke in the third verse of the Bhagavatam, Pibhata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam Muhuraho Rasika Bhuvi Babukaha. Drink this nectar over and over again, and even if you fall to the ground because of its intense, it's a little bit fermented, and he say today, you will cup on second cup comes on. And Rasam Alayam. So Alayam even means on the stage of post-liberation. So you keep drinking this beverage beyond mukti. So that's a very unique type of intoxication. So Sanatana Goswami mentions here, the word Madhupati implies how Krishna is intoxicated, but his devotee, as they intoxicate me, I intoxicate them. Krishna basically says, as they approach me, I reciprocate accordingly. So the currency here is liquor, the liquor of prem. So that's the only currency available in Braj. So everyone is a drunkard basically there. So of course, going to a more general meaning, sorry if I jump too quickly to the drunkard version of Madhupati, but Madhupati also means like the protector. Pati means the master, the lord, or the protector of the Madhus, which is another way of saying Jadupati. Krishna is also known as Jadupati. It's another way of saying Madhupati, the protector of the Yadavas, the protector of the Madhus, the protector of the Yadus, Jadus, Jadavas, Madhus, Madhavas. All these Jiva Goswami explains refer to the same thing. And the Yadavas, also the Brajavasis are included there. It's not only for Krishna's devotees outside of the Braj. So the point is, the gopis here are calling Krishna Madhupati by implying you are the protector of the Brajavasis. And of course, so many things can be said about how Krishna protects the Brajavasis. The gopis themselves sing in the Gopi-gita, many things about that, how they protected from different demons and the rains of Indra and the forest fire. But specifically in this context, the name Madhupati, in the context of being a protector of the Brajavasis, has to do with two main things according to the acharyas in the Sakya and Madhurya currents. No? So how he's protecting his friends, because he's entering the forest with his friends. No, don't forget that. So he's protecting his friend. Protecting is a way of saying by by having all the requisite ingredients for having full fun with them in the forest. Now, having in mind already what to do in the forest with his friends, so they will have a great, unforgettable time every single time they enter in the forest. And the word here is abhagahi, I would say, which is fully entering the forest, which means Krishna has full knowledge of the forest, of all the different sections, even though eventually for meeting Radha in the Madhyan Lila, he will show some ignorance of that. I want to explore some unknown corner of the forest. But that's not the moment yet. No, that we're Venu-gita, so the meeting is not is coming. So in this point, Krishna is said to protect his friends in the form of knowing every secret and spot of the forest, so to warrant to them, we will have a great time today, basically. So that's one meaning, and of course, the second meaning applies to the gopis. And how is Krishna protecting the gopis? Him being in the forest, they being in the village, by playing his flute and nourishing their purvarag, their separation, their longing, in such a way to reach the point of perfect moment for meeting, basically. Also, Madhupati, the word Madhu has to do with Madhava, and Madhava also is a name for spring. So Krishna being Madhupati means he's the Lord of spring. And of course, spring is the season, the romantic season among all of them. Now we are in autumn here, which is pretty romantic also, but spring is like the romanticism par excellence, if you will. So spring falls also in the month of Madhu, according to the calendar, and that's why it's connected to the word Madhava. And spring is the month of Madhurya, Madhurya Rasa, basically. And this Madhurya is protecting the Brajavasis, if you will. That's another way of saying. And another inference with the idea of Madhupati, of Krishna being the Lord of spring, is that Krishna is like the Istadevata of spring, the presiding deity of romance, basically. So when Krishna is entering the forest, again, the presiding deity of spring is entering the forest. And we are in autumn, we are not in spring, but the whole autumn forest starts to blossom and flourish like if it was a spring, because the Istadevata of spring time is entering. So the whole flower is responding to that effect by blossoming and flowering and attaining its apex and full resplendence. No, it's not spring technically, but it's spring subjectively, if you're there. So it is said that in this way Krishna is entering and seeing. Remember, all this is describing Krishna's entering into the forest. From next verse, we will go back to the village where the gopis are hearing Krishna's song from the forest. And so Krishna is entering, seeing the maddened peacocks dancing, the romantic dance, and the intoxicated bees. And again, all this having so many implications and udipanas for him, and the sounds, and he's trying to blend with them, and different trees flowering and blossoming, like if it were spring season, and river Jamuna, reminding him of the color of Sri Radha's clothes. So Krishna starts like to become too inspired, basically, not to play the flute. He has to. So he entered into three Banga Lalitas. We know his tree bent in three. Yeah, his form bent in three, crooked in three forms. Sometimes crooked, the word crooked is there. To say that everything is crooked in Krishna, but crooked in the nice way, no, not crooked like Jatila, Kutila, because the name Jatila, Kutila means crooked, but crooked more like Jatila comes from the word Jata. Jata is like a dreadlock. You have a dreadlock, which means like it's a piece of hair that originally you could have combed that and may present that in a certain way, but you allow that to become crooked. No? So that's Jatila's psychology, and Kutila follows suit. So they are crooked in that negative way. Krishna is crooked in another way. It's crooked because in his crookedness, he's accommodating everything. That's how our Acharya explained that. That's the nature of love. Vihara Aheri Bhagati Premna Swabhava Kutilabhavit. Love moves like a snake in a crooked way, because Srila Srimaras will say, if love will move in a straight line, so many things are happening here, so many things are happening here, but they are not being accommodated, they are not being embraced, they are just neglected on both sides. But if you are moving in this way, you're embracing and accommodating everything on your way, and nourishing from everything, and making that, also integrating that as part of the equation. So that's the nature of love, integration, and everything can be part of the equation. So the fact that Krishna is crooked, one could say, is crooked in the sense of accommodating. He's crooked here, crooked there, to embrace and to accommodate. And of course, sometimes it is poetically described, Krishna is crooked or bent in three parts, because he cannot deal with so much sweetness inside of him. We already saw how sweet he was. So much overload of sweetness. So sometimes he's like, okay. And of course, it is described that he's crooked in that particular way as an excuse when he's next to Radha. That crookedness makes him like getting closer to her, like getting like, a little bit closer, wanting to become more and more close to her experience. So in this way, this is the scene depicted here by Sukadev Goswami. So it is said that he's holding the flute to his lotus lips, and with his blue lotus bud-like fingers, everything is lotus about him as well. And he starts to pour Adharamrita, the nectar of his lips, into the holes of the flute. And Chukuja Venum. Give me some minutes. Today is Christmas Eve. We have time till midnight, no problem. So this is my Christmas gift to all of you, with your permission. So Chukuja Venum, which means he vibrated Chukuja, his Venum, his flute. So Chukuja, Kuch, it is said that in Sanskrit is an intransitive verbal root, which basically means that it's like used specifically not to inanimate objects, but to things like birds or cuckoos, these specific singings. It's like to alive stuff, if you will. So generally you don't think in terms of a piece of dry bamboo with holes as something with its own life. But again, Krishna's flute, it is. So the implied idea, but by using the term Chukuja in relation to Venus, the flute is alive. So that's the very meaning of Venu-gita, one of the meanings. And I will try to conclude, if you give me permission, today's meeting with some list of possible meanings or interpretations of the word Venu-gita, because the whole series and the whole chapter is called Venu-gita, but there are many degrees of meanings of why Venu-gita. So one meaning is Venu-gita is not so much Krishna singing through the Venu, but the Venu singing out of itself. The Venu being alive, having its own will, its own feelings, and expressing. And Krishna just putting his mouth there, but the flute is speaking for herself or himself, according to which flute. Krishna has some female flutes and male flutes, Bamsi, Murali, and Ben. Sorry. So that's one meaning if we understand this idea of Chukuja. Like the flute is singing, it itself is singing. It has its own life, its own message to give. And the gopis will express something like that later. We will see in subsequent verses. Some other level of interpretation of Venu-gita is that the species in the forest, the different inhabitants of the forest that we have mentioned a few now, are singing to Krishna. And Krishna is engaging in Jyatamam Prapadyante Tam Stataiva Jamyam. Krishna is replying to them. Again, Krishna is entering the forest, birds are singing, bumblebees are singing, rivers are singing. So Krishna reciprocates to how every of his devotees approaches him, so he starts to sing for them. That's another layer of possibility, basically. Another one, important, interesting, and all of them has to do with different of the different rasa departments in Vrindavan. Another one is Krishna's entering the forest. Remember, by this moment Krishna's entering the forest, so he has left the village that he departed with great difficulty from the grips of of Jashoda's Vatsalya Bhav, who was not able to allow him to go, and as we mentioned, invoked so many reasons for him not to go and stay at home eternally. Like Krishna was able to go, but Jashoda in the distance is totally concerned. Is he okay? Everything is okay? Is he? So Krishna, it is say one other possibility is he's playing the flute to tell Jashoda mainly, who is the main Vatsalya representative, but by extension the whole of the Braj in the village, apart from the gopis in this case, more like the Vatsalya camp. So Krishna is playing the flute in the forest to send a message to the Brajavasis in the village: I'm safe. I'm arrived safe to the forest. Because again, for the Brajavasis in their Vatsalis, you are going barefoot to the forest. Who knows where you will go, and you want to explore every corner of the forest and taking care of cows and in my baby. So they need the confirmation. Everything is okay. No, like when you have I don't know, a baby or a child, and the mother is working and the child is playing there, and then the child will make a mess and will make sounds. But the mother is okay. He's okay. He's doing okay. No, he's there doing. If for some time there is no sound, she's like, what's going on? No. She's concerned because he's too quiet, something like that. So okay, he was sleeping. Okay, that's right. So then the sound is confirming, here I am, I'm doing my duty, my mass. So it's okay. So Krishna is confirming with the flute, no? Okay. And Jashoda herself is asking this to Krishna. Keep playing the flute when she's leaving. Keep playing the flute so I know that everything is okay. Now send me that message. Send me that message. And not only that I know that you are well, but I know where you are. So you can imagine which level of alignment they have. Like Krishna's playing the flute and Jashoda knows, oh, now he's here. Oh, no, he's there. Oh, no, he's there. And by the fading of the sound, Jashoda will know how deep he's entering into the forest. And she will at some point, you are entering too much into the forest, and so on. And of course, we may ask at this point, but how? I mean, it's not that the village is here and the forest is like 50 meters there. It's a long distance. So, how loud can Krishna play the flute for Yashoda to? No, he's not having amplification system with this like Morley is putting there here. No. So it is say that actually the whole of Vrindavan is cooperating for that to happen. So whenever Krishna is playing the flute, sending that message to Yashoda, Vrindavan, the whole of Braj and the birds and everything becomes silent, so the sound can, and the breezes expertly carry that particular sound wave to Yashoda's ear. So okay. He's there. Okay, so everything is like properly arranged. So that's another level of understanding of this Venu-gita, why Krishna is playing the flute and for whom is that song, if you will. Of course, another layer of meaning is Krishna is playing for the cows. As we know, the leader of each cow group, Krishna has 108 cow groups. And in each cow group, many subgroups and many cows, of course. So each of the leaders, it is said, that has some little, well, sometimes as you have seen that, they have like a bell here. So whenever the cow leader goes with the bell, generally the other cows will follow suit. And that's a way of knowing where they are, basically. So in the same way that each cow leader has a bell for telling Krishna where they are, Krishna is playing the flute for them to tell them, here I am. Because sometimes the cows they like to explore and eat grass. Whatever there's grass, the cows are there. So Krishna is telling to them, here I am. And it is said that the cows hear their own names sounding in the flute sound. So which is pretty interesting. I don't know if someone has developed that. Morley? Not possible yet? Already to have that many cows and know the names of all of them, that's already like a big accomplishment. What to speak of calling their names through a flute sound. So so Krishna is doing that basically, and as we know, that's his moment of japa also. He has his sadhana there, and when the cows are coming, he's having his japa mala, and he's counting all of the different cows and groups. Okay, this one came, this one came, this one came. We chant Krishna's names in our Japamala, and Krishna chants his devotees' names in his Japamala. So It's reciprocal again. He's doing japa of his devotee, we're doing japa of Krishna. But it is said that some cows, interestingly, because again, Krishna is mostly calling the leader of the group of the cows, and the rest will follow. But some cows exhibit some form of rebellious nature, and they don't come when Krishna is calling because they want Krishna to call them specifically by their name. So they remain, and Krishna, this one is missing. Okay, and then okay, no, there we go. So that's another layer of meaning. Krishna playing the flute for the cows, and of course we can apply, of course, another layer of meaning. Krishna play flutes for his friends who also play flutes themselves, and they create the whole game and competition and interaction, love and interaction by flute playing here and there. That's one of the main Venu-gita for Sakya Rasa. Buffalo horns and sticks and flutes and so on. And interestingly, of course, all these different layers of meaning are subjectively true. It's not that, I mean, every devotee, as we know, will think, oh, Krishna is playing the flute for me. And everyone is right in one sense. No? And they will, oh. But objectively speaking, in this context, of course, the main meaning of the Venu-gita is mostly connected with the Braja Gopis and with Sri Radha in particular. So Krishna is, by playing his flute, he's telling them, basically, I'm in the forest. And his message to the gopis is, I am the forest with the pretext of grazing cows, but actually, ultimately, I want to meet you here. That's my ultimate purpose of coming here. Again, they have not met them together yet, but he's sending these messages to them. That will be the ultimate interpretation of being Venu-gita. But even on top of that, if you will, the most ultimate confidential meaning is that Krishna is playing his flute song, thinking of the gopis and thinking about Radha, and in reciprocation to that song of the flute that Krishna is playing, the gopis will sing their own Venu-gita. It has not started yet. It will start in verse 7, but verse 7 till 19 will be the song of the gopis in reply to the Venu-gita. The Venu-gita of the gopis in reply to the Venu-gita of Krishna, if you will. So therefore, that will be a very dear section to Krishna himself. The gopis singing to him. So at this point, and with this, I'm finishing, believe me, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that at the very last part of the verse mentions that although generally Krishna and his friends played flutes, in this particular moment, because here Krishna is described going with his friends Pashupala and Balaram, and to go Charana Lila, entering the forest, taking the cows to graze and so on. But here it is not mentioned that all of them were playing their flutes, although they generally do. But in this particular case, only Krishna was playing the flute, connected to this notion of he's sending a message to the gopis. Because again, and how it is interpreted like that, our Acharya said, because here the word friends is used in plural, and the word animals are used in plural on one side. So the friends were with the animals. That's how it's in Sanskrit understood sometimes. You put plural and plural, and then he says Madhupati and Venum. Venum is flute in singular, and Madhupati, of course, is singular also. So Madhupati, Venum, singular, singular, and Pashupala and Gaba and cows. So plural, plural. So plural goes with plural, singular goes with singular. Friends are there with the animals, and Krishna is there himself, only himself playing the flute. So in that sense, it is said that this particular Venu-gita came from Krishna's flute specifically, from the forest, and it was a reply. And eventually, we will see that there will be the reply of the gopis to that, from the village to that flute only. And that will be clarified in the next verse that we will see, I don't know, tomorrow, next class, yeah. But it will say Krishnasya Venu-gitam. Next verse will say Krishnasya Venu. Krishnasya means of Krishna. So this Venu-gita came from Krishna exclusively to the gopis, and then we will have Venu-gita from the gopis to Sri Krishna. So tomorrow we will continue with verse number 3. So not till this very first 2 verses were describing the scene on the forest, Krishna entering the forest. Next verse we will go back to the village and what's going on with the gopis there, while hearing all that is we have seen in these first classes, and from there their Venu-gita will proceed. So see you tomorrow. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Sri Sri Dauji Gopal ki jai, Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Sri Venu-gita ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Praman, Haribo. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta koti vaishnava vrinda ki jai.